welcome everyone. It's great to see you all. Hope your weekend is going well. Hope you're enjoying these autumn days. We've definitely shifted, I think, into autumn in our region, and maybe folks are joining us from different places where it may even be colder and some places where it may be warmer. So welcome to you all, particularly warm welcome to anyone joining us for the first time. Please, if you'd like to share in the chat, you know, who you are and where you're joining us from, and anyone who would like to share where you're joining us from, you can just rename yourself. Just go up into the corner with those of your screen, of your little icon, and go to the three dots, and you can rename yourself if you'd like to. So just want to welcome everyone warmly, and just a little few words of introduction. I'm Hugh Byrne. I'm a teacher with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, IMCW. Been teaching with IMCW since about 2003, and started teaching back in 2000. So going into my third decade of teaching, and I think I shared last week that I was going to be involved in activities around climate change, and we had a lot of things happening here in DC, and I think over 600 or so people were arrested for civil disobedience, calling for stronger actions around protecting the planet and the different species. And I was one of those on Tuesday. So my claim to fame is I've been arrested every decade for the last 5 decades. So going back to 1982 at least once. So so it's nice to have that continuity of practice, I think I call it, you know. So, but anyway, I think hopefully all of us know the importance of, you know, however we want to engage in trying to turn things around the climate, and so many other important things to give our attention to, but to just to keep that in our hearts, and the future for our children and our grandchildren and their grandchildren, and for all of the other beings, the other sentient beings that we share the planet with. So also very much these sessions, these classes are offered under the auspices of the Center for Mindful Living, and many of you attend other classes and other offerings. We'll share at the end some of you know, how you can get information on the different offerings really every day of the week on through the Center for Mindful Living, and the classes and the meditations and the other wonderful offerings. So if you're not familiar with the center, we'll be sharing information in the chat and later on that. So with that, good to see everyone, good to be together again. What I'm going to do today, the format will be similar to other weeks. We'll begin with a meditation for about 20 minutes or so. Then there'll be a talk. The theme today will be on wise speech. And as I mentioned last week, I kind of had more than I could deal with or cover in 1 week. So what we'll be working with and exploring today is wise speech, our communications, and particularly the kind of how we can work with our speech, so that we suffer much less, and we create less suffering for others as well through our speech. I think all of us know how challenging an area our communications can be, how we can be triggered by what people say and what people do, and we can get pulled into, what the Buddha talked about as harsh speech, divisive speech, false speech, idle chatter and gossip, and the ways that we can speak unskillfully, and how we can cultivate wise speech. And I'm going to be looking at some practices today that I think of another meditation teacher, Buddhist meditation teacher, that I think are very wise and very helpful. But first, we'll have, after the talk, we'll have Emily will lead us in some movement. Then we'll have some sharing, hopefully some group sharing today, and then some closing short meditation and some sharing of announcements. So we'll begin, as we do, with a meditation. And the invitation is really to meet ourselves where we are, however things are right now for each one of us, just to open to what's here with as much kindness, acceptance, curiosity as we can. So you might begin by just finding a posture that's comfortable and relaxed. If you'd like to, you can close your eyes, let your attention come inward. And just drop your attention out of the thinking mode. If you can, let go of thoughts as much as possible. And just come into the body. Feel your body. Feel the weight of your body pushing down on your thighs, on your buttocks, on your feet. Just let your hands rest comfortably in your lap or on your knees. And let the chest be open so you can breathe easily. Inviting a relaxing of the shoulders. Letting yourself settle. And you might find it helpful to take some deeper breaths. Nice, full, deep in-breath and out-breath. As you breathe in, filling the lungs, filling the chest. And as you breathe out, releasing, letting go. Imagine you're releasing any tension you might be holding, any stresses of the day. Breathing in, inviting a calming of the body and the mind. And breathing out, relaxing, releasing. Letting go. Just making any adjustments so you can be comfortable, relaxed, alert. Taking your seat. And in your own time, just letting the breath come into its natural rhythm. Breathing in, breathing out. And let yourself open to what's present for you right now in the body. Notice what bodily feelings stand out, if any, right now. And just make space for what's here. See if you can just meet whatever's present with kindness and let them come and go. You might let your awareness come to the mind states, emotions. Maybe there's some tiredness, or you feel restless, or you feel peaceful or excited, just whatever you notice. See if you can make space for whatever is here. Letting the feelings come, letting them be, letting them go. Notice the mind. Does it feel calm, spacious, or more tight and contracted, or some other feeling? Just however it is, just meeting what's here with kindness, with acceptance. With curiosity, with interest. So relaxed and alert, inviting that sense of ease, calm, relaxation. Nothing you need to do, just to be here, relaxed and aware of just noticing what's present for you. You might bring your awareness to the energy, the movement of energy in your body. And whatever feelings, sensations are moving in the body. Just letting them come, letting them be, letting them go. And if something feels difficult, maybe there's a feeling of worry or fear, some other difficult emotion or mind state. Just a simple gesture of putting your hand on your heart, maybe a hand on the belly, and just wishing yourself well. May I be happy, may I be safe. Whatever word or phrase or gesture, just of caring, holding your experience with kindness, with compassion. And letting the breath be a support. If we're feeling some difficult emotion or energy, it can be helpful to take a deeper breath or two, inviting a settling, a relaxing of the body and the mind. We can let the breath be a focus for our attention too, as a way of resting the attention in the present, just aware of breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in, know that you're breathing in, and breathing out, know that you're breathing out. In breath and out breath. And if you find the mind has wandered, has moved into thoughts, maybe into plans or memories or worries, any other kind of thinking that takes you away from here, just when you notice that, just gently and kindly, let the attention come back to the body, come back to the breath, or whatever focus for your attention you're using. If you're using a focus for attention, an anchor or a home base. So not to make thinking a problem, just notice when the mind has gone off and gently and kindly come back again, here now. Think of this time as a time to just open to what's present, to create a space we can just be as fully present as we can be with whatever is arising. We could begin from a place that nothing needs to be any different than it is. The mind often goes to, I don't like this, I want it, I don't want this, I don't like this. But how would it be just that whatever is here, we could say is lawfully here, is here coming from previous causes and conditions that give rise to whatever it is that's here right now, whatever emotion or mind state or feeling. So none of it is wrong. But if we can meet it wholeheartedly, open-heartedly, kindly, with acceptance, then there's room for everything. As Martha Postlethwaite says, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is yours alone to sing falls into your open, cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world, so worthy of rescue. This moment, just as it is, this moment without judgment, beginning again in any moment. This breath, this feeling, this sound, this moment. Just letting the awareness be large enough to hold whatever's present, whatever's arising in your experience. Finish with this poem by Gregory Orr, titled Untitled. This is what was bequeathed us, this earth the beloved left, and leaving left to us. No other world but this one. Willows and the river, and the factory with its black smokestacks. No other shore, only this bank on which the living gather. No meaning but what we find here, no purpose but what we make. That, and the beloved's clear instructions, turn me into song, sing me awake. So welcome anyone who joined us after the initial welcoming. Glad to have you with us. And what I would like to do is to continue to speak today about wise speech, sometimes called right speech. I think, as we all know, our communications and our speech can be a challenging area for us to work with. We can experience a lot of suffering around communications, misunderstandings and angry speech, and people feel that people haven't kept their word to us, or perhaps we haven't acted on our speech or our communications wisely. And there's a lot that can come up with speech and communications. And so it's a very important area, obviously, for us to work with as a practice, as a Dharma practice. It's important enough that the Buddha gave it a wise speech, right speech, a whole area of the Eightfold Path is central teachings on finding a way to the end of suffering, the Eightfold Path being the fourth of the Four Noble Truths. And what I spoke about last week, a term that resonates for me, is that the Buddha's teachings on wise speech provide really a kind of riverbanks for our practice. And I like that metaphor of riverbanks. We sometimes use it to describe the way in which things are kept within a certain area. So obviously the riverbanks keep the river flowing in the direction it's going in, so that, in the absence of, huge floods, etc., the water, goes from, the higher ground and goes towards the sea, etc. In the same way, the riverbanks of the Buddha's teachings on wise speech keep us moving in the direction towards ending suffering, towards freeing ourselves from suffering, by basically kind of telling us, don't do this, don't tell lies, because if you tell lies, it's going to cause suffering, it's going to cause division, it's going to cause suffering to the person who tells the lies. There's going to be a sense of separation within them. They're going to have to keep in their minds, or we are, the truth and, and the falsehood, and we're going to have to remember, oh, I told this person this, and, and now I've got to be consistent, and, and then we can get ourselves very, very tangled up in false speech, in harsh speech, in divisive speech, in kind of wasted time kind of speech. Idle chatter and gossip is what it's called in the texts. So if we follow the prescription of the Buddha in these four areas, don't, abstain from false speech, abstain from harsh or angry speech, abstain from slanderous or divisive speech, abstain from idle chatter and gossip. If we kept those precepts, I think we could reliably say that our lives would be much easier, much less complicated, and I think much happier. There would be a lot of suffering that we wouldn't have, I think, if we followed these precepts, if you like, or these prescriptions of wise speech. They're of benefit to ourselves and of benefit to others. And the main thing for the Buddha, when he was teaching about the Eightfold Path, the main thing that he was focused on is what will move us more and more in the direction of freedom in our lives. So the prescriptions around wise speech are to help us do that. They move us in that direction. We won't be getting caught up in falsehoods and in angry speech and things that get in the way of really seeing things clearly and waking up. So that's really the prime purpose of these prescriptions of how we should speak and how we shouldn't speak. I mean, how we shouldn't speak primarily, but also how we should speak. We should speak more in a kindly way, truthfully, in a way that's, we're sharing what's necessary in a timely way to the right person at the right time, etc. And in doing that, it benefits us and it benefits others. We help create an environment of truth, of trust, of connection, of non-harming. So in following these prescriptions, then we cultivate a community. We help build a community and a society that is more trusting, where people can trust each other, where people can know that they're safe. We're really creating a community of safety in following these precepts. So they're extraordinarily important. And they're also, there's also things that the Buddha doesn't focus on here in relation to wise speech. they're very much about telling us what to do and what not to do, but they're a lot less focused on how we practice. For example, if we were tempted to tell a lie to somebody, how would we work with that? Or if we were tempted to get angry in a conversation, and we had enough presence of mind to bring awareness to that, how would we work with that? We were going to say something harsh, or if we're going to spread gossip about somebody, if we're going to share something, we might not call it gossip, we might call it, sharing information or something that maybe isn't appropriate to share. How do we do it? How do we work with that? And the Buddha doesn't so much focus on that in these prescriptions of right speech. It's really about, don't do this, don't do that, don't speak harshly, don't speak falsely, don't speak divisively, and etc. So it's also really valuable to look at teachings and practices, excuse me, that help us to work on the how we work wisely and skillfully in speech. And the other thing that the Buddha doesn't focus on in the wise speech specifically is speech communications as a relational practice. When we're communicating with another person, or sometimes with many people. If we send out an email to a lot of people, or we stand up on a soapbox and talk to people, in Hyde Park or wherever it might be, that we're communicating. And so, so we're also concerned with not just about, what we say, but also about the impact on the other person, and, the speech as a relational practice, how we get our needs met through our speech, our communications. Because when we're communicating, we're trying to get our needs met. We're trying to get something. If I'm speaking to you now, and it comes from a need. It doesn't mean that I need to be heard necessarily, but I have a need or a wish to, in the best way I can, share these teachings coming out of the role that I have, in sharing these teachings. I want to do it as well as possible. So that's a need that I have. I don't need anything necessarily, particularly from you, from anyone individually, but there's there's a need that I'm wanting to meet through my speech, and in the way that you're responding, you're wanting to convey something as well, in terms of your speech, your communications. It may be, that you're interested, that you're curious, or it's serving a function or whatever. All of our speech in some way, all of our communications really meets a need. And it's that aspect I want to speak about today. And I began that, or I gave a very, very quick overview of that last week towards the end of the talk. And I want to again share the book that I think, for me, it's one of the best Dharma books of the last 10 years that I'm aware of. I think it would definitely be in my top 10. It's a really, really excellent book. And I think the best book that I know of on communications from a mindfulness or Dharma perspective that I know of. It's by Oren J. Sofer, and it's called Say What You Mean. Say What You Mean. I don't know if you, probably that may not be clear because I've got a fuzzy background, but Say What You Mean, Oren J. Sofer. And it's a powerful and I think really helpful approach to cultivating mindful and compassionate speech. And he takes, he's a Buddhist meditation teacher, and he takes the Buddha's teachings and practices on wise speech, but also more broadly, the Dharma teachings, and explores them from a standpoint of really of practice, of how we engage in wise speech. And he's trained in Marshall Rosenberg's approach to nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg wrote a book. He wrote more than one book, but his best known book is called Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Love. I don't know what year that came out, but it's at least 3 more decades old. It's an excellent book that really is working with speaking compassionately, speaking wisely, and in a way that allows you to get your needs met, or a person to get their needs met, while working to see that the other person or other people on the other end of the communication are getting their needs met as well. It's a very, very powerful practice. NVC is a shorthand. People spend, practice it for years and years, and it's something just like cultivating mindfulness or cultivating gratitude or other qualities. Developing this approach is really very, very powerful way of learning to speak more wisely, more mindfully, more compassionately, and in ways that help you get your needs met and help others get their needs met in your communications with them. So Oren Sofer, in his book on Say What You Mean, kind of takes this approach, uses Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication approach, and really imbues it with the Buddha's teachings on mindfulness and compassion. I'm just going to highlight 3 of the main kind of areas, 3 main prescriptions that Sofer gives in terms of how we can cultivate wise speech through practices of awareness, of mindfulness, of speech. And the 3 kind of headlines or headings of this are: first, to lead from presence, from being present while we're speaking, to be aware of our own sensations, our own emotions, our own feelings, our own thoughts while we're speaking. Because a lot of when we get into trouble in our speech is when we get disconnected from ourselves, from our direct experience. We get into the story, and I'll talk more about that. We get into our heads and we disconnect from ourselves in a profound way often. So that's the first, to lead from presence. The second is to come from curiosity and care, really to be curious, to be interested, and with that to really be intentional. What am I trying to do here? What am I trying to say? What's the other person trying to say? What are the needs that they're trying to get met through their speech, through my speech, our speech? That's the second, come from curiosity and care. And the third is to focus on what really matters. And here Sofer gets into the approach that Marshall Rosenberg highlighted, with 4 main kind of focuses for our attention, which I'll talk about briefly: observations, feelings, needs, and requests. And I'll come back to those. But just to highlight these and maybe kind of connect with them a little bit in practice. So the first one is to lead from presence. And what that really means is to be present, connected with our experience. So our bodily experience, just aware of the bodily feelings that are present, aware of our emotions, aware of our thoughts, aware of our intentions, being really present with our overall experience while we are speaking. Excuse me. The Buddha said to be present, we need to be present and aware before we speak, while we're speaking, and after we speak. So when we're present for our own experience, for our present moment experience, we're more able to connect with another person or with other people. We're more able to be aware of them and their needs. If I'm completely up in my head and I'm racing along, or I'm really feeling angry, I'm wanting to convey something kind of angry in my speech, that you know the person I'm talking to has done something wrong or shouldn't be doing something, or if I'm caught up in that, then I'm not present for my own experience. I'm not really aware of them. So we can just stay grounded in and present in our experience as we're speaking. And if we do get carried away, get pulled into something, we come back again. So the more we're aware of our experience, the more choices we have about how we speak and how we respond. Because if I'm in my head and I'm caught up in my anger, and the other person, the person I'm speaking to, has a tone, or is conveying a sense of, they're angry too, or they have kind of feel there's passive aggressive tone or a sarcastic tone, then very easily we both get pulled into our heads. We get disconnected from our bodies, from our present moment experience. And we're kind of pulled into that. We get carried away in that. We're not in a position to step back and choose. To be able to do that, we have to be able to pause. And then we can notice, oh, I'm really caught up in my being angry right now. And then we can choose, okay, let me pause, let me take a breath or two, settle down, slow down. Maybe I could then choose, okay, we're both feeling really quite tense right now. Maybe we can come back to this in half an hour. That would be one choice we could make in that. So we have to be present in order to show up for our experience. So the skills we use when we practice in this way is just to be aware of our bodies. So as I'm speaking right now, just invite you to pay attention. Just be aware of your body, be aware of the weight of your body pressing down on your buttocks and on your thighs. Feel the sensations of your feet touching, pressing down against the ground or whatever they're touching. Just be aware of the feelings in your hands. Feel the sensations of breathing. And notice what that is like, as I invite you to kind of come out of your head or out of the thinking mode and just come into the body. You could move your attention from your breath to your thighs or your buttocks or your feet. Move your attention to your hands. So we can practice shifting attention from one focus to another. You could move your attention to my words and then come back to your body. And when we're in a conversation, we can stay aware of our body. We can still be present for what the other person is saying and what we're saying, but we're grounded, we're present. And if we find we get pulled into our thoughts or our emotions, we can come back again, come back, just connecting. There's, what's the other person saying now? How are they responding to what I'm sharing? So when we're in a conversation and we're present, we can choose when it's time to speak, and when it's time to listen. We can modulate the pace of our speech. We can choose to pause. We can move our attention between awareness of our own body, our own feelings, our own thoughts, and the person that we're speaking to. So this can be particularly helpful when we're in a difficult conversation where there's tension, there's tightness. We come back and realize, oh, okay, I'm really tense in my chest and my belly. Take a breath or two and just kind of slow things down. Notice the things that are triggering, maybe the other person's tone or their gestures. Bring curiosity to the experience, to what they're saying, to our own experience. We come back to our intentions. What's important right now? What matters most? So these are some of the skills that we can use when working with wise speech. Leading with presence, being here, being present. The second principle really is to come from curiosity and care. And this really involves connecting with our intention. Oren Sofer says, if we're not consciously choosing our intention, we're on automatic, relying on unconscious habitual patterns. If that's what's happening, it's pretty hit or miss whether we're going toward our destination. So coming from curiosity and care is really having the intention to understand. I want to understand what you're saying. I want to be present for this. Can I put aside my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own opinions, and really listen with presence to the content of what you're saying, and also to the feelings. Feelings maybe they're underneath what you're saying. With the intention to understand comes empathy, which includes the perspectives of the other person, their feelings, and how they're embodying, what they're feeling and what they're sharing. So coming from curiosity and care. Here's a story that Oren Sofer shares about the musician Daryl Davis. You may be familiar with this story. Daryl Davis is an African-American musician and author who spent the first years of his life abroad. It wasn't until age 10 in 1968 that he discovered people could hate him for his skin color. While marching with his all-white Cub Scout troop in Massachusetts, people threw rocks and bottles at him. The incident sparked a lifelong curiosity about human attitudes. How can you hate me when you don't know me? He wondered. Years later, after playing a gig in an all-white bar in Maryland, Davis was approached by a white man who said it was the first time, quote, he'd heard a black man play as well as Jerry Lee Lewis. Davis shared that Jerry Lee Lewis was a friend of his and that Lewis had learned to play from black musicians. The two continued their conversation and over time became friends. The man eventually shared the names of local KKK leaders whom Davis contacted and interviewed for a book he was writing. Davis asked them about their views on various subjects and listened. At first, the Klansman never asked Davis for his thoughts, believing he was, quote, inferior. However, with patient, friendly conversation and through Davis's continual effort to create a real connection, they gradually became interested in his side of things. It was as if Davis's own warmth and respect slowly drew forth those very qualities in them. In the end, he formed friendships with many clansmen whose beliefs shifted after getting to know Davis. Many left the clan and even gave Davis their robes and hoods. Over the course of his work, Davis has convinced, through dialogue and friendship, more than 200 members of the KKK to leave the organization. Daryl Davis may have never taken an MVC class, but he understands the power of intention. When we create genuine human connection, radical transformation is possible. So that, just as a clear, it's obviously an exception because few people take the time and the intention, certainly of working with people that are so, distant from them in their worldview, in their politics, in their way of being in the world. But out of his curiosity, he brought forth really a caring, a connection, a wanting to understand. And Oren Sofer, he says, if you take nothing else from this whole book, I hope you will take with you the importance, the intention to understand, to come from curiosity and care has in your interactions. He says, when we come from this place of intention, from this quality of intention, then we bring less blame and criticism into our words. And then it'll be easier for others to hear us. So we're really leading with curiosity. And so we won't be leading, we won't be coming forward with you're this, you're that, with blame and criticism and judgment and all of that. And so the other person will be able to hear us more readily. And this then leads to the potential for more mutual understanding and understanding of each other. And then the more we understand each other, the easier it is to work together and find creative solutions. So the more we lead from intention, the more we come from empathy, that a wish to understand, the more others will be able to hear us, and the more we'll be able to, more mutual understanding that will be possible, and the easier it will be to find creative solutions to allow both of us, both sides of the discussion, to get our needs met. So think about that. Think about how often do you go into conversations where, you may be coming from a habitual place. You're not necessarily clear about what your intentions are. I find myself, if I'm in a difficult conversation with my significant other, and we get into a kind of a tight place in our conversation, if I have enough presence of mind to pause and ask myself, what is my intention here? I find I'm acting in the conversation and I'm speaking as though my intention was to be right and prove myself right. But then when I ask myself, is that what I really want? Is that the most important thing for me, to be right? I answer, no, of course it's not. Big deal if I'm right, who cares? That's not the most important thing. But at the time, I'm acting from that place of, I'm right. No, I'm right. You need to listen to me. You need to hear what I have to say. And what I'm really wanting is I'm wanting understanding, or I'm wanting connection. I'm wanting to be in relationship with the other person, you know, which is much, much more of a deeper intention than of being right, or of even being heard. Obviously, I want to be heard. We all want to be heard. We all want to be respected. So this brings us into the third of these principles, and that is to focus on what really matters, what matters most. And here, Oren Sofer uses the approach of Marshall Rosenberg of how, you know, what are we trying to do in our communications? And Marshall Rosenberg, in his book, Nonviolent Communication, he says, what we're really wanting to do is get our needs met. And we can do that when we pay attention in particular ways. And he says, what's important is to pay attention to 4 particular kind of areas where we can bring attention. And the first he calls observations, the second, our feelings, the third, our needs, and the fourth, our requests. So I'll just name these briefly and then kind of finish up the talk for today. So speaking in the language of observations, what we're really asking here is what happened? You know, we often get into situations where we get into difficult, communications, and it's often because we're not able or willing to speak from observations. You know, if somebody comes late to a meeting with us, you know, and they, you know, we're in our minds, we think, oh, they're always doing this. Very easily we say to them, you know, I don't think you care about me because you're always late to our meetings, you know. And then there's this broad generalization. But maybe what the truth is, or closer to the truth is, you know, maybe the last 2 or 3 times you've arranged to meet together, you know, your friend has come late. And so if we were to say that in the language of non-judgment, of observations, we can say that, you know, I've noticed that, you know, the last 3 times we've agreed to meet, you've arrived late. And so if I say that, you know, in the language of observations, rather than you're a jerk, or, you know, you're always late, you know, this broad generalization, it's more possible for the person to hear. Secondly, if we express our feelings in a genuine way, say, this is what I feel. Maybe I feel sad, or maybe I feel annoyed that, you know, that you've arrived late, you know, without giving me any notice or warning of that. I could say that. I could say, you know, I noticed I felt angry, or I felt annoyed, or I felt sad, you know. And from that, if I really speak from my own feelings, I'm not saying you are this or you are that. It opens up some space for dialogue. You know, it's kind of like, I'm not saying you're this or you're that. I'm saying, I am feeling this. It allows space for dialogue. It invites less defensiveness and reactivity. Imagine, you know, if you say, you know, you're a jerk, or you're this or that, how is this person going to respond? You know, they're going to feel attacked. Or you're always late. You know, they're going to feel, no, I'm not always late. Well, you know, so the more we can speak from feelings and observations, the more space there is for communication, for the other person to be able to respond without reacting or feeling that they're being judged. And the third area is to come to recognize the needs that we want to meet. Why am I saying this? Why am I asking this? You know, in the situation, the example, just in that example, my need might be for connection, for communication, my deeper need. I want, or respect. You know, I feel that, you know, I'm not feeling that there's respect being given, you know, through, you know, the behavior. You know, what we can do is we can connect with, what am I really looking for here? I might come back to, you know, and And our needs can range anything from food or shelter to communication to self-expression or connection or freedom, a whole range. Maslow spoke about his hierarchy of needs, from the most basic to the most kind of broad, wide-ranging spiritual needs we have. And the more we can connect with our needs, our own needs, and the more we can connect with at least what we can invite the other to share, or what we can intuit from them of their needs, the more we can work together to get both of our needs met. This is really at the fundamental to nonviolent communication. What am I asking for? What are you asking for? What are you needing? And then the fourth is to make requests, to speak in the language of request. What am I asking for? Rather than demanding, you have to do this. What am I wanting in this situation? In the example I gave, it could be as simple as saying, if you're going to be late when we're meeting up, could you send me a text, or could you call me? Could you give me some notice so I'll have, or maybe because if I don't know, then I may be worrying that you've had an accident or something. So to speak just in the language of requests rather than demands. So these are the four areas for to give our attention to in relation to wise communications, the how of speech. If this interests you, and some of you may already be very familiar with Marshall Rosenberg's work, maybe also be familiar with Oren Sofa's book, maybe others aren't. Where I would leave this is just to ask, just to invite you to ask yourself, where do I feel challenged in my speech, in my communication? Is it around telling the Buddhist prescriptions, telling the truth, or angry speech, or divisive speech, or kind of gossiping, sharing what really isn't appropriate to share? Or looking more at what we've been focusing on right now, do you get lost in your habits of speech? You get caught up in getting angry if you feel somebody is attacking you. Do you feel that you aren't able to be present in your speech? Are you able to ask for what you want? Are you able to connect with your needs when in your speech? Are you able to speak about your feelings? If you are sad about something somebody has said, or you're angry, or you're frustrated, are you able to say that rather than, reacting in a passive aggressive way, for example? Can you speak in the language of observations? This happened, rather than you're always this or that. And can you actually make requests? Speak in a skillful way. This is what I am looking for. And it may be something the person might say no to, and that's okay, and then you can go from there. How can I get my needs met when, if I'm not able to get them met in this way here? So exploring this, if this is an area of interest to you, and I think for most of us it is, it's an area where we experience, I certainly have my share of it in my life, of challenges around speech and communications. So I'll leave it here. It's been a bit long today. Apologies for going on a bit, but I wanted to cover those themes today, and invite Emily, if you would be willing to lead us in some movement, and then we'll get into some sharing.
Let me invite you all to just stand up and maybe take your arms and sway them around your hips and allow your body to move. You could even lift one heel as you turn to the opposite side. And then move your arms up, raising them if it's comfortable. And then open your arms wide to just lift your chest up, lifting your head. And then allow your arms to lift higher, reaching up. Grasp your left wrist in your right hand and reach out to the right, tilting down, opening up, breathing into that left rib cage, softening with the exhale. And inhale up, switch wrists, lifting up towards the right. Exhale, lower, tilting down. Breathing into that right rib cage. Exhale, soften. Inhale up. Bring your arms down to cactus arms. Exhale, drop your arms down. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, down. Inhale, rise. Exhale, dropping down. Then extend your arms. Turn your left palm up, right palm down. And on the inhale, switch. And switch. And switch. And switch. Last time over to the other side. Dropping your arms down, roll your shoulders. Roll them the other way. And then draw your hands behind your back, right near your waist. Inhale, lifting your head and chest. Exhale, draw your arms down, lengthening. And then back to your waist. Exhale, allow them to lengthen, hands lower, and release. Last time, drawing your hands down, draw your shoulder blades together, and release. Float your arms up. Just do whatever dance. I'm going to move my shoulders independently and circle them the other way. And then one more movement, placing your hands above your knees. Inhale into a flat back. Just allowing your hips to be a little further away than your heels. Exhale, lower down. Allow yourself to drop down. Feel the pull of gravity. Your head, your neck lengthens down. Only going as far as you wish, as you feel is safe. And then place your hands above your knees. Roll up your spine, lifting up, keeping your shoulders up by your head. Exhale, lower them down. Bring your arms up above your head into prayer position. Lower down to your heart. Take a bow. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Emily. Thank you. I needed that. I'm sure I wasn't the only one. Thank you. I think what we will do today is, Mark, is we'll stay in the full group. What I'd invite you to do is a couple of things. One, if you like to share in the chat, just, how this whole area of speech and communications, anything that comes up for you around that, you know, is this an area of difficulty for you, or do you feel that you can, you know, go through your relationship with your family members and people you work with or people in the community where everything kind of sails along without any problem? It's like that story Tara tells and other people tell, you know, that one, I don't have it memorized, but that, you know, you wake up in the morning and you feel, you know, kind and generous and open and all of that. And then if you know, maybe I'm getting two stories mixed up, I think. This one is the one where if you can do that, then you're probably a dog. Remember that one? Yeah. I'm mixing it up with the other story where somebody gets, you know, somebody, oh, I'll get the stories, come back to them another time. Anyway, just share how speech and communications are for you, you know, where you feel challenged, you know, what's a struggle for you, and you know, anything that you know, has works for you, you know, what are helpful, you know, practices for you that help you kind of step out of, you know, being activated. I know for me, you know, it's the one-on-ones with probably a couple of things for me. One, with significant people I'm close to, where you know, we kind of get locked into habitual patterns, and you know, there can be some underlying tension, and then kind of it takes some untangling. The other thing I've had challenges with is people on the phone, you know, when you're trying to get something, you know, trying to get something worked out, and the struggles that you can have around that. And you know, I've worked at that, and it's an area I continue to you know, give attention to. But I don't know, maybe you know, each of us have our different experiences. So anything you'd like to share, please do that. And also anyone who'd like to ask a question or share anything within the full group, just put up your hand, or physically, or using an icon to do that. Christine?
I had an interesting experience the other day, and this is the second time it's happened with this person. She asked me a question about how was something going, because I'm dealing with something that's rather stressful. And when I told her the truth, and it wasn't all happiness and light and la-di-da-di-do, she walked away. And this is not the first time she did it. And my feeling is, if you don't like the answer, then you need to change the question. And I had another conversation with her a long time ago, and it's pretty obvious to me she's very naive. She's a nice person. She's a reasonable person. But she's in la la land sometimes. And I've learned to, you know, just keep it light. And the friendship or the, you know, the acquaintance will probably never become a close friendship. But do you want the truth, or do you want to change the question?
Yeah, thank you, Christine. Yeah, I mean that it sounds like that's a, you know, maybe a wise approach if you know, if we discern that somebody doesn't want to, you know, be engaged, or you know, puts up barriers, etc., then, you know, if you take that signal and say, okay, that's fine, and then not everyone in the world has to be your closest friend, you know, and that can be okay, you know. And if there is something that you have a need for, a wish for in the communication, you know, if it was somebody who you feel, okay, this might be, you know, if we could get over this barrier, for example, there might be a depth of communication that was possible. And if it felt worth it to do that, then that could be an approach. I'm not saying in your case you should do that by any means. I'm just talking hypothetically. But, you know, if again, it's really based on what our, you know, what we're looking for and what our needs were and are. And you know, ultimately, what will lead to the greatest, you know, what will lead to happiness, what will lead to greater freedom. You know, if we're looking at it from a Dharma standpoint, it's like, well, what will help me to free my heart? You know, sometimes it will be to kind of say, okay, I won't have communication with that person because, you know, it doesn't seem possible to have it without a blow up or without, you know, things that cause a lot of suffering. Well, that might be a very skillful means. So as in other areas of practice, you know, a lot of this is really about skillful means, you know, of choosing what is wise action, what is wise, you know, what is a wise step to take, what is wise speech, and practicing with that. And I think the things I highlighted today from Oren so far, I find very, very helpful, particularly just being really grounded in the body, letting our body be a kind of a barometer, kind of like, oh, okay, what do I need to look at here? Oh, I'm feeling really tight and tense. Okay, can I breathe into that? Can I come back into just being present? And the intentions, you know, what am I looking for here? You know, what were you looking for, or what are you looking for in your, Christine, in your you know, communication with this person? It sounds like before you were looking for something, but maybe now you're just saying, okay, being an acquaintance maybe is enough. Anyone? Deb?
I wrote a comment
Okay.
in the chat about I'm talking to a doctor about a procedure tomorrow, and I need to make sure that that I convey my concerns. He wants me to do a CT scan with iodine, and my thyroid just won't take it. And I just, I've been so frustrated on the phone with the nurses and the, you know, receptionists. And I guess I need to be really grounded before I get there. So, you know, it's sometimes a lot harder to be present than others. So,
Yeah.
if you have any ideas.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I hope you can feel the care of the community and feel, you know, when we're suffering, one of the things we experience is we often feel very alone. You know, I'm going through this. So if you can just take in the, you know, we collectively hold you in loving kindness, send good wishes for your appointment, and know that, you know, you're not alone. You know that you have the support of the Sangha, the community, and yeah, I mean, really, I would just come back to some of the things that we talked about today, of just staying as grounded as you can be. You know, just opening, recognizing, you know, yeah, this is difficult, acknowledging that, you know, because often we override that. We say, oh, you know, they should be different. I should be able to kind of get through this. But take the time. Practice of self-compassion is really valuable, Deb. You know, just wishing yourself, you know, maybe listen to a guided self-compassion meditation. You know, some of them on Insight Timer, I think, can be very helpful. Of Kristen Neff's got some on there, NEFF. She's a really good teacher. I've got one or two on there. But just recognizing that it's hard, and, you know, just some of the phrases, you know, may I be kind to myself, may I accept myself as I am, you know, just recognizing that and trying to stay as grounded as you can be as clear as you can be about what are you needing, you know, and what is my intention going into this meeting, you know, what am I wanting, what am I intending? And in real time as well, when you're in there, see if you can just, you know, keep coming back to the body, keep coming back. If you find yourself getting activated, annoyed or whatever, just come back again. Take some deeper breaths if you can. You know, it's a practice. It's not a simple, you know, particularly with situations like this, or, you know, relationships where there's a long history perhaps of habitual kind of ways of responding. It's not so easy. So we really need to give ourselves as much space as we can. I think space is really important, finding the space to pause, to breathe, to come back, you know, and recognizing we're not going to get everything right, and being kind to ourselves, being compassionate to ourselves. Those are some of the things I would emphasize. Yeah, and I think probably right at the top would be self-compassion. You know, just being kind to yourself and being as present as you can be, and being as intentional as you can be, you know, being as, you know, clear about what your intentions are, because then you can come back to them. You know, is my intention to get my way here? Well, not really primarily. What I really want to do is I want to have a good outcome here. I want to have a good communication so that I get my larger needs met, my larger health needs met, you know. So I hope that's useful, and I hope you can feel very much the support of the community here, Deb.
That's very wise. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you.
And Hugh, I believe that Heather in Saskatoon had her hand up.
Hey, Heather.
Hey, Hugh, this is local politicians. I put this in the chat.
Yeah.
It is so difficult to, I mean, there really isn't respect of their constituents. And as you may have noticed, politicians don't like to be disagreed with. And I'm just, I don't know, it's in a sense, I'm in a culture that is very, very different from, you know, these are from how I grew up. There are people who are, they really, I think, have lived their lives in kind of conflicting situations and relationships. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, sort of being bold in disagreement. And I guess, I mean, I know you've done a lot of human rights work in the past, which is pretty intense. And I guess if you've got any thoughts on how to deal with those situations where the culture is, you know, there's such a gap in between what you see as right and what somebody else sees as right, or not right, but the proper way of communicating. And I'm not saying I get it right all the time, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, my first question, Heather, would be, what are your intentions when you go into one of those meetings? Can you kind of articulate that?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few situations in our tiny little town. You know, the intention is, I think, for two things. One, you know, they're trying to ram through something, specifically an ATV trail on a really tiny, quiet little country road, which will really impact a lot of families quite a bit. And they did it without, you know, without public meetings. They, you know, just sort of, we found out about it when the signs went up, and we've sort of got a delay, but there's just, I mean, it's complete lack of democratic process. So I mean, I think what we want to get, I mean, the intention is to get a sense that, hey, you didn't do this the right way. Can we, can we start again and get more people involved in the discussion, particularly those who, those who are going to be most impacted by it. So that's, and often it's hard to come up with compromise in these situations. There's some people who basically say, oh, we've been riding these roads all the time. This is our way of, this is our recreation. This is really important to us. So it's, and then you've got people, who don't want to compromise at all from our side, and other, so it's just kind of, I think we're getting there. But it's just really, it can be really fractious, and it's craziness.
Yeah. Let me put it as a question, is your need in this situation, I mean, you've got the larger need, the larger, thing that you're wanting to have happen. But if we speak about it in terms of needs, it sounds like what you're needing is to be heard. Would that be accurate in some way? Would that be a kind of, that you want to have your point of view put out there and to be heard, and obviously you'd like to have a resolution that would meet that larger needs that you have, which are for the space to live your life in an enjoyable way. I don't know what rubric of need that would necessarily come under. I'd have to think about that, but that you have a need for peace and quiet, something like that, or to be able to, live your life in an hassled kind of way. And so, are there ways in which you can speak? It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get everything that you want, but that you could get those needs met. And would the practices of, that we looked at, of being present, of being clear about intentions and the kind of the feelings, needs, etc., would that be helpful in engaging in those situations, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's more difficult in the rough and tumble of a meeting where there's lots of people there and everybody wants to get their word in. So it's, but yes, I think, and I have noticed too that when you do speak from the heart, when you don't say, hey, you guys are a bunch of jerks and pushing this through, when you say, hey, look, I'm really affected by this. Can we have another go around? And, it has been helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it's helpful, I would say kind of look at your situation and put it in terms of, what are you observing, about the situation, like what you shared with us, that there doesn't seem to have been a kind of due process in terms of making the decision. Just to be able to say that in a non-judging way, if you get a chance to say that, and to speak from your feelings, again, in a non-judging way, to say, this is what I felt, I felt, if it was sad or annoyed or whatever it was. And then what are the needs, what are the deeper needs, and what is the request that you would make? The request, it sounds like you were saying was, let's revisit this, let's have the discussion again, and then look at both sides of it. And then you, in a way, you kind of take a lot of the heat out of it, and maybe a lot of the clinging out of it, of like, I've got to get to there, I've got to get to this outcome. You can be kind of clearer about that as a whole. I mean, those are just some of the elements. I'm conscious of time now, and so probably we will need to finish this up. But I'm going to save the chat and everything people have shared there, and we can come back and, if people want to revisit any of these questions, we can come back in the future. I hope that's helpful for a short short feedback, Heather. Thank you. And let's just finish with some announcements. I'm going to share. What am I going to share? A couple of things. I've got a day long on, I think it's called Walking the Buddha's Eightfold Path, something like that, but about how bringing these teachings of the Eightfold Path into our daily lives, November 6th. Also, I'm co-teaching the New Year's retreat in December 26th to January 1st. So it's online, and so it's an opportunity of practicing, you know, at home. Good time to practice just before the new year begins. And, you know, we maybe have commitments of making change in our lives of different kinds. I like to think of commitments rather than resolutions. Let me see. I've got a workshop coming up on Insight Timer on December 11th on mindfulness and habit change. So you might, if you're interested in that, check out the Insight Timer app. And the last thing I will say is, oh yes, that if anyone's new here today, there's no cost for the class, there's no set charge, but you're invited, if you're able and you're inclined, to give dana or make a donation, which is known as dana or generosity in the Pali language, dana. And that's what helps me to keep teaching, and I'm grateful for the support and grateful that we have this practice of dana that's come down to us through 2,500 years of generosity. So thank you for your support.